I bumped into a friend of mine recently who I've not seen for a little while. We got chatting and I said to him, "What are you up to these days?" And he said, "Actually, I've got into ventriloquism." And I said, "Oh, wow, that sounds interesting. How's it going?" He said, "Really well." He said, I've bought myself a ventriloquist dummy. I've got a great book on how to be a ventriloquist." He said, "I've even bought a glass to put water in for when I do my routine. So you could say I got all the gear." Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're looking at the sort of gear you need if you want to record a podcast. Hi folks, I'm Rob Poyton. Thanks for joining me in today's edition of Self-Publishing. So last time we spoke about how and why and where and when you're going to set up a podcast. This time we get onto the nuts and bolts with looking at what sort of gear you need in order to produce a good quality podcast. Now, of course, whatever gear you have, it's dependent on your surroundings as well. You can have the best microphone and setup in the world. If you're going to go down to Heathrow Airport and record at the end of the runway, or if you're going to stand by the side of the M25, of course, your sound quality is going to suffer. Now, it could be that you're doing recordings out in the wild, so to speak. Perhaps you're recording something about walking, going on nature walks or rambles. In which case, it might be nice to have some of the podcasts recorded outside with natural sounds and all that sort of thing. However, of course, the big issue is the larger the space and environment you're in, the less control you have over sounds. And the second thing to consider there are the acoustics of the space that you're using. This is a wooden building, it's all insulated, so it's quite a nice enclosed space. I did used to record in the house when I first started podcasting in an upstairs bedroom that I sort of converted into an office. It's not a huge room, but there was very little furniture in it and the sound would be very bouncy and echoey, so it was quite difficult to get a decent sound. So first things first, sort out your environment, sort out your acoustics, and then we can start looking at the actual hardware. So of course with a podcast we're recording our voice, and what sort of gear you go for, hardware and software, depends to a large extent on what sort of podcast it is as well. If you're working on your own, then your options are much more straightforward. You might even find that for recording, you can just use your phone. If you've got a decent phone, you can just speak into that and the quality will be enough for your needs. If you're working with another person or you're interviewing people, that type of thing, then the phone might be okay. Of course, they need to be in the same room with you, but then with one phone or one microphone sometimes, you can get this sort of thing to you, to me, this sort of backwards and forwards, which isn't ideal. So in that case, then you start to look at other types of recorder. A bit of kit that I use a lot for my music recordings is this, the Zoom H2N. Now there's various models. I think the Zoom HS2 is quite commonly used for podcasters. This has a number of mics built into it and you can adjust the settings so it will just record from the front, it will record from the front and the back, so in a two-person situation you can just put it in the middle, and there's all sorts of other settings when you get into the menus that will affect the quality of your recording. For music, this is great. It also can automatically compress as well, so for music it'll even out the levels quite a lot. For voice recording, it's not too bad, though it does tend to pick up a lot of background noise and hiss as well. If you're in a space like this, then maybe that doesn't matter so much, but as we've said before, if the acoustics of your recording area are not that great, then this is going to amplify that. You're going to have a lot of work to do in editing to cut that background noise out. However, if you've got a nice quiet place, then a Zoom is a good option, either this model or some of the others. In terms of price, This, I think at the moment, is around 100 quid, 110 quid. It records to a sound card. You can USB it straight into your computer to download the files. Very easy to use, a simple menu system on the front. Very simple. Now, of course, if you're working remotely with another person, then that's not going to cut the mustard. So we need to look at working with microphones that plug into our computers. Zoom is the most obvious choice. I've been using Zoom for a few years now for teaching, for remote teaching and training, for podcasts, that kind of thing. And I have to say I've never had any issues with it. There are lots of other services as well you can try, so have a look round. My experience is they all cost about the same. Some offer different things, but for me, Zoom, given that I'm mostly working on audio, has been the best so far. Of course, if you're working via Zoom or another service, you need to have a mic that will plug into your computer, and that will record the sound. The same thing is happening at the other end. Your interviewee or other person's sound is being recorded, and when you've finished, that recording is downloaded to your computer, and then you have your file for editing. So you can go with what you might call the traditional mic. Again, for music, for singing, I've got an SM58. However, because it's SLR, you're going to need what's called a breakout box or a small mixing desk. I ended up getting a small mixing desk that was USB. So the SM58 went into the mixing desk went into the computer. However, I had quite a lot of issues with that. The mic is designed for vocals, but not so much for speaking. And also, unless you've got some sort of booster in between as well, you'll find surprisingly that the volume on those mics can be very low for that sort of recording. So I looked around at USB mics, and this is the first one that I got. It's a sort of generic brand. It's not any particular brand or well-known make. And this is the sort of thing you can get on Amazon for about 20-25 quid. The advantages with this is, say, it's USB, so it just plugs straight into your computer with the correct lead. And you have some controls on the front here as well. The good thing with this one is you can plug your headphones into it. So, of course, you need to be listening to yourself and the other person while you're recording your podcast. If you've got the other person playing over your computer speakers, then the microphone is going to pick that up. So you will need headphones as well. But with this, you can plug your headphone in here, you plug that into the computer, you've got a sort of volume control and that sort of thing. I think there's a reverb control on there as well. Never use that. You're not likely to need reverb for your general recording. But easy to use, and away you go. Pretty cheap. The disadvantages, of course, are with that cheapness, it's not a very high quality microphone. So again, I found with this, it was picking up a lot of background noise. It will pick up the hum of the computer, you know, that kind of thing. So this was okay for a while, but I soon upgraded. And this is what I upgraded to. This is an Audio-Technica cardioid condenser mic. Once again, you've got some controls on the mic itself. You can input your headphones. You can adjust the volume of the headphones to get a nice mix in your headphones. So an upgrade, but I still wasn't quite happy with this. I still found with this mic, especially working in the house, it was picking up quite a lot of background noise, but it was a step up. And this was, I think, somewhere between 60-70 quid. So we're gradually going up in price. Anyway, with those issues that I still had, I found I was having to do a lot of work still in editing to get the sort of level of audio that I wanted for the podcast. So I decided to upgrade again. And this is what I'm currently using to record all my podcasts on. It's the Blue Yeti X, which is a very well-known brand for podcasters. Though for that reason, it seems to attract some sort of negativity as well. It's weird, isn't it? When something becomes popular, people tend to look down on it. But this was 110 quid. It's, as you can see, quite a bit more substantial than those other mics. Comes on a very firm base. And we have a number of controls on here. for the volume, for the mix. Also on the back, you can record just from the front, a bit like our earlier Zoom mic, just from the back, from all around. So it gives you a lot of options, this one. And I have found with this one, in terms of cleaning up the audio, it's cut my editing time drastically. Just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and it's ready to go. Now, speaking of EQ and compression brings us on to our next subject, which is software. Whatever we're recording with, the recording has to go somewhere. Of course, these days that's going to be on your computer, so you end up with a WAV file or an MP3. Now, it might be, again, depending on what sort of podcast you're doing, that raw footage, if I can call it that, is ready to go straight out. However, it might be if you're working with another person, for example, the minute you've got two voices, you've got a potential issue over levels. And I've had this before where I listened to a podcast once that had a subject I was interested in. It was actually a sort of Lord of the Rings podcast. But I found it unlistenable because one person was speaking like this and I'm listening in headphones, so they got a nice level in their voice. And then they go, so Bert, what do you think about that? And Bert goes, yeah, well, I think it was pretty good. The way the orcs came in was very interesting. And you know, now to some extent I've got an advantage in that I've got a background in music. So for the last however many years I've been used to going into studios. I've got a home recording set up now. So the idea of levels and a mix and everything else is very natural to me. Of course, if you come into all of this new, then it's a whole new big world that you've got to explore. And it can appear very daunting. So let's look at a couple of programs we can use to help ease our way into this. The most simple program to use, and one that's free to download as well, is called Audacity. Let's take a look. So with Audacity you get this workspace, and as you can see here I've loaded this track in. This is actually one of the previous episodes of the Innsmouth Book Club. So your audio file appears as this line, and you can make various adjustments to it through these different effects. If I click the effects button here, you'll see we've got a whole list of stuff. Now, this isn't going to be a tutorial on EQ and compression and all the rest of it because we simply haven't got the time. But of course, if you go on YouTube, there's a ton of stuff that will take you step by step through all of these. Really, for our purposes, the two we're going to use the most are EQ and compression. So let's just take a quick look at how EQ works. I select my clip or the section that I want to change. I click on EQ, and as you'll see here, if you if you grew up at a certain time, you'll remember a graphic equalizer on your stereo or on your Walkman. This is exactly what this is. If I push these buttons to the left up, that will increase the bass. If I push the buttons up to the right, that increases the treble. So with this, you can fine-tune your file, your sound, into something sounding exactly right. Because obviously with a voice, you don't want it sounding too boomy, but also you don't want it sounding too tinny as well. So with an EQ, it's very easy to get that right level on your sound. Compression is quite a complex subject, but you can basically think of it as leveling out the sound across the whole file. So imagine, for example, you're recording something and a door slams in the background. That will show up as a big spike because that sound is much louder than your voice. What compression does is brings everything down into a particular sound range or bandwidth, if you like. Therefore, louder sounds will be dimmed down a bit, quieter sounds will be brought up a little. So that's a very quick and easy way of getting a nice even level across your whole recording. There's a few other things you can do with Audacity. You can put a fade in and fade out at the start and end, for example. Now, one thing you will find more difficult with Audacity is if you have to work with multiple tracks. However, if it's just you and your voice, It's very easy with Audacity to drop a little bit of music in at the front and the end. You just leave some space at the front of your file, then you open another track, you drop your music or your sound effect in, you make sure you've got the levels between the two right, you can adjust the volume on each very easily, and then of course once you've done all your adjustments, you just export that out to your MP3 file for uploading. Now if you're working with more than one vocal track, if you want to add in some music, perhaps some sound effects, that kind of thing, you can do that in Audacity, but you're going to find it's much easier if you do that in something called a DAW, a DAW, a digital audio workstation. Now these can range from fairly basic and straightforward right up to your studio level stuff. I use one called Sonar Cakewalk, which is fairly cheap. It's not free, but it's fairly cheap. And the main reason I use that is I've been using it for years, so I'm very familiar with it. However, one I'd recommend, and again one that you can download for free, is a program called Reaper. Now, although all DAWs are slightly different, the basic layout is the same. So let's take a look at Sonar and I'll walk you through it. Alright, so what we have here, this is the latest episode of the Innsmouth Book Club that I'm just editing today to get out for the weekend. And as you can see, we've got a lot of separate tracks here. And all those tracks are on one display. I can add tracks very easily. I can delete tracks. I have a lot of control over what goes into each track because on the left here, I can adjust the levels and I can add effects just to one specific track only. So for example, if I select the audio track here, and as you can see, we've got the EQ there. I can put compression on here, reverb, all that sort of stuff. This makes it much easier to mix the tracks together. We've got some intro music at the start, then the talk begins. Actually, we've got 3 voices on this one because we ran an interview just recently. So it's very easy to get the balance correct between those 3 voices. Now, one issue you might find is you could have a really great microphone and you've got your setup is great. The person you are interviewing might be on a little headphone mic sitting in a cafe somewhere. You have no control over what they're using to record their voice. We generally say when we're going to interview someone that we prefer if you've got, you know, at least a half decent microphone and somewhere quiet to sit and talk to us. By and large they have, because most of the people we interview are working on podcasts themselves, or they're used to doing live streaming, chatting online, that sort of thing. So it's never really been an issue for us, but it is something to watch out for. Now, what you'll find with the DAW is, as well as your EQ and compression, you'll get a ton of other effects as well. And it can get a little bit like, you know, you have too much choice sometimes. It's a little bit like, I remember in the early days of video editing, you started out with just a basic fade cut between scenes, and then it got to be, you could have the thing spinning in and out. You could have like an iris open out. You had 30 different transitions between scenes and you spend ages trying them all out. And in the end, you just go back to the normal fade anyway, because, you know, that works best. So it can be the same with your recording, with your audio editing. I would say, don't be tempted to put effects on too much. You don't really want a lot of reverb. Now, if you're doing a reading or there's some sort of dramatic thing you want to emphasize, a little bit of reverb can be a good thing, but just in small doses. Another thing to think about there is background music. I think it's very good to have intro music to your podcast and an outro. I'll talk about that a little more next time. But some podcasts I listen to put the music running underneath through the whole thing. If you're going to do that, then make sure that the music is what I call low level. You want something quite bassy and you want something quite smooth. I listened again to another podcast a while back where they had music underneath and it was like a loop, like you get in a lift or something, but it was very sort of a boom ba cha, boom ba cha, da da ba dum ba dum ba dum. So it was very intrusive on the voice, and in fact, again, after 5 or 10 minutes, I had to stop listening. I couldn't get this music out of my head. So if you do have background music, then make sure it fits nicely under the vocals and doesn't impinge on them. Of course, it doesn't have to be music. You could use sound effects as well, depending on what sort of podcast you got. You could have the sea underneath. When we've done some readings for ghost stories, we might have a ghostly wind howl underneath, but it needs to be subtle. And again, with the DAW, you add that track in and you've got total control not only over the levels, but again, the EQ of that music or sound effect. Do you want to add a little bit of reverb in, and so on and so on. So that really is pretty much it as far as hardware and software goes for recording your voice for a podcast. The only other thing I might mention is I do find with some of these microphones, if they're on a desk stand, they can pick up a lot of noise if you've got a creaky table, or if you fidget a lot. I don't know if this mic, obviously I'm using a lapel mic here, which again would be good for podcast. This one is wireless to my camera. If you could get similar to your computer, then that might work very well as well. The upside is with the lapel mic or the headphone mic, it cuts out all this kind of noise. What I do find you can get with this, if this comes very close, then it can start picking up your breath and little rustles of the clothing and that sort of thing. And of course, if you're outside, you will need a little windshield on something like that. So, that's another possibility, is the lapel mic. However, for the table mic, then you could look at getting a boom arm as well. So this is a boom arm, pretty cheap, very adaptable bits of kit. They'll come with a clamp that you can fix onto your desk or table. This one I'm actually using with the light fitting at the moment for when I'm doing painting, so I can get it right over what I'm painting, and it's got a magnifying lens on it as well. But of course you have attachments for microphones. So the advantage here is that rather than the mic being down here, which might be a little far away from you, and you pick up all that table noise, you can have your mic here, or whichever position you want to put it in. By the way, when you're working with the microphone, you'll need to experiment a bit, but I generally like to be quite close. Again, the further away I am, the more chance there is of picking up all that background noise. Having said that, I don't want to be right on top of it, and I want to be aware of my breathing. You might want something, what is called a pop shield, which just helps cut out on what are called plosives. Sometimes when you say p or k, then it spikes. Paper, p, p, p. I don't know if I'll get it on this because this is quite a good mic. So the simple addition of a pop shield, which is a little sort of mesh screen that goes in front of the mic, will cut that down. Just one other tip to cut down on plosives and the breath as well is not to talk directly into the mic, but just turn it so you're talking slightly across it. You'll still pick up the voice very well, but it will become a lot less breathy. And what I do find sometimes, if that breath is an issue, then that's something you can take care of in editing, of course, because you can cut all those little bits out that you don't like, but that is a lot of extra work. Okay, so that's our basic hardware and software. Your microphone, your headphones, your computer, and your boom mic, possibly, pop shield. That's pretty much it. I think you'll find whatever podcast it is, they're all using the same equipment. Of course, the standard of that equipment will vary. But, for 110, 120 quid, I think you can get a very good microphone. The software you can get free, Audacity, Reaper. Boom arms are about 20 quid, I think. You've probably got some headphones lying around. Don't stint on the headphones though. Tiny little earbuds are all right, but they really compress the sound. I generally prefer using this type of headphone, so the old-fashioned over-the-ear job. Cuts out all the background noise. I can really hone in on the sound quality of what I'm listening to with something like these. I hope you find that helpful. As always, if you do have any questions or comments or suggestions, do let me know. I'm always interested to see other people's setups and how they do things. Of course, it gives me on ideas on how I can improve my own. There's a saying amongst musicians, well, it applies to authors as well, you know, a mix is never finished, it's surrendered. You're always looking to tweak the sound. It's never quite good enough. Having said that, when you listen back, be critical, but don't be overly critical. You'll be surprised what people don't notice. You might think, for example, you're saying a lot, maybe you are. I'm going to talk about that more next time, how we present ourselves. But, you know, don't obsess over it. As long as it's clear, as long as it's coherent, as long as it's easy on the ear, you know, there's no harsh noises, there's not that horrible background music or someone drilling next door, then people will listen to it, if your content is interesting, of course. More about that next time. So, thanks again for watching. As always, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.